Welcome again to another segment of our Smart Business Entrepreneurship Conference. At this time, I would like to introduce our next guest, Mr. Haywood, the chairman of the A-Class Group of Companies. Mr. Haywood, welcome.
Nice, thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
All right. Thank you for being here. I know you have a very busy schedule.
Yeah.
There's a number of hats, a number of initiatives that you're currently engaged in.
Right.
So I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
Nice.
So, Mr. Haywood, I would like to sort of have this interview or this session to share your vast experience from the corporate side of things to establishing very prominent NGOs and also becoming a successful businessman in your sphere. Share with us some of your upbringing, education, what inspired that journey.
Right. Well, to be honest, started off in the Seventh Adventist Church doing a lot of youth work, fundamentals from very young. Actually, I used to go to church on Saturday and Sunday.
Wow.
SD and Pentecostal, because my mom is a SD and my dad is a Pentecostal. So I used to go to church all weekend, starting from Friday with youth groups. So I was very invested in that space for a long time. Secondary school, it started to change a little bit. But I think that is what has created my philosophy towards charitable caring for young people. And that would have molded and shaped my whole worldview and philosophy to today. You know, so that's the critical foundation, and then probably I would have gone on to following some academic pursuits later in life, to be honest. I'm not straight out of school. I'd have done business straight, tried, failed, and then eventually come around to a point now where I'm currently doing my PhD. I'm trying to finish in probably the next year.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about that professional, that initial. I know, you would have started in, cargo, customs, specialty. Tell us about that experience.
Well, I always wanted to contribute immediately to my home. I always wanted to get money in my hand, to be able to make change and to do things. So actually, even before I came out of school, the summer before, I would have worked part-time in industries, when you work for 2 months for summer vacation and helping out and that kind of stuff as an apprentice. And when I came out of school, I decided to go straight into the world of work. Straight into the world of work as I became
what school was
17.
that, by the way?
The best school in Trinidad and Tobago, El Dorado Secondary.
All right, okay.
Yeah, and I say that because of the holistic development.
Right.
I have seen and I've journeyed, and I've been around a number of things. And there are some areas where some schools stand out in one particular area. But in Eldo, it was a total. We did homework, we did TD, we did a total development. So that's amazing.
So special shout out to the El Dorado family, school family. Is there any teacher or lecturer or at that time that you would like to mention that would have made a difference at that point?
Well, I really want to go back on our principal. We used to call him Inches, but the way that he led and the way that he carried about himself, I found that was very outstanding. He gave a very clean and honorable approach towards education and towards the school culture. He really made it feel that we were part of a prestige school, and that shaped our lives to this day.
I guess a level of confidence he would have instilled in the students. So continuing in terms of from the school into the world of work and that progression. Talk to us about that.
So I started to work at around 17 when I started as a loader, and then went to a panel van driver, then a messenger, and then from a messenger I did some messenger merchandising, and that's when I went into customs as an apprentice custom clerk. And then coming out of customs, I did the apprentice exam, then the grade 1 exam, and then became an official custom clerk. And in that space, one of the managers, James Arundel from Trinidad Import and Export, would have pulled me across from customs into sales of heavy equipment.
Okay.
And that is where the bug started to bite me in terms of seeing my potential in sales and convincing and transforming. And that is where the sales started, selling forklifts, selling equipment, and the company really invested in us and invested in development and training and development. So I did Dale Carnegie training courses and the Dale Carnegie sales competition that I won that particular year in Trinidad and Tobago as the Dale Carnegie sales talk champion. So that then further kind of doubled down in my mentality that, okay, I know I always used to talk and talk well, but to win a national competition or a training competition from a sales training program that's over 100 years old now and it's in Japan and Singapore, everywhere, kind of really homed me in as top-notch or 1 in a million locally, and that totally transformed my confidence and my ability to think about doing extraordinary things locally.
Excellent. Yeah. So that was a launching pad.
Yeah,
even
definitely.
You were employed. Yeah. You learned skills.
Yeah.
You developed yourself. You trained. And it created that confidence to go on further.
I think my mom would have been telling me from a very young age, you're extraordinary, you're amazing, you're special, you're extraordinary, amazing, special. And probably coming up in that space, you started to take it for granted. My mom's supposed to say that. Now we know not all moms say that. But in my mind, that was standard and that is mandated. So you started to lose the value of what it meant by saying that, mommy just pappy showing you. You know what I mean? But when outside of that space, people were also telling you you're number one, you were the best in the room, you were the best in your country. That then doubled down on what mom was saying, and then I realized at that point, okay, this is not makeup. Mom not just pappy showing me. This could be something. And that started to shape the mind that I can do anything locally, I can be anything locally, I can try anything locally.
Yeah. During that work phase, we were having some conversations earlier. I think you did something at the age of 25, if I'm not mistaken. In terms of acquiring your home. Tell us about that, because most young persons not thinking about that at that age. They're thinking about traveling, the car, you know, whatever. You know, what motivated you at such an early age to make such a commitment? And a serious financial commitment as well.
To be honest, a victim of crime, you know. To be honest, people don't. That's a good question, but most people don't ask what would have driven that. People look at it and just applaud or just smile.
The end result.
But it was really because I was a victim of a criminal experience. I remember I started off, the same company I was in was selling off the older vehicles. So I saved up my money and I bought one of the older vehicles at a good book value price. And then I bought a next one and I had 2 taxis on the stand. And then I started to do some car rental. And in that youthful exuberance, when I had about 3 or 4 cars on the stand, I started to brand my vehicles and started to live a certain kind of life. And one day, when my dad was parking one of the vehicles, they came up to him and they thought I was in the car, and then they hit him and pulled him out of the car and stole the vehicle. And it's at that point I realized that even what I was doing for me was affecting my immediate family. And that is where I got the drive to remove my business operations from my parents' home, to remove them from that risk, to remove them from that. And then that would have pushed me now to even looking for a home in a gated community. Not because it's a big boy thing, but you can't just walk up to my gate anymore and just take my car again. You know, so that was really the driver's safety and security perspective and a reaction. Sort of sold some cars, had a deposit, and that's when God showed up even bigger for me. Because when I went to HCL to apply for the home, they basically laughed at me because you was too young, you didn't have enough deposit, your salary wasn't meeting the criteria for that type of gated community home.
Right.
And I said, no, put my name down still, I'll make it happen.
Okay.
And they kind of were really laughing and happy at my exuberance and my mindset.
Right.
And I said, I really put out your name. I said, make sure I write on the list, put an asterisk next to it so you can remember to call me.
Right.
And it was a fun experience. And I left there. And a couple of months after, Clico crashed in Trinidad.
Okay.
Yeah, and because of the crash, it then trickled down into them having a fire sale because HCL falls under that Clico umbrella.
Right.
And in having that fire sale, they did the homes for probably about 60% of the original cost.
Well, look at
And
that.
without even knowing,
Timing.
I got a call because of the asterisk.
Right.
And I remember, we have something amazing that just happened. And we have 10 days to sell about 60 homes.
Wow.
And I was able to go in that period and capitalize coming right after the incident. Right. So that's where I also looked at God's hand in everything and the prayers of your grandmother and everything to everything happened at the right time, because the only reason I went in to have that conversation was because of the same robbery. Right. And the only reason I decided to sell the cars was to come on for the limelight. So I also had the available deposit at the time. Right. And it just lined up. It just lined up really well. So the outcome of that is a 25-year-old young man moving into a gated community with your neighbors who have children 25 years old.
Yes,
so that in itself was an interesting dynamic in the community, because everybody looking at you and curious and stuff like that as well.
Excellent. Yeah. That is an amazing testimony story.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Timing, preparation, having the cash at the time.
Yeah, confidence too. Saying put your name with the asterisk, being confident in yourself, understanding the power of your manifestations, the power of your words, the power of your belief. And that's something that we as young people must continue to have. We have to see things, we have to visualize it, and we have to speak it into being as well.
And you knew exactly where you wanted to go.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. How would you compare the government housing, right, versus the private? Was the vision more clearly where you wanted to go, or was it just a matter of having a separate space to live in?
No, it was a number of things. One of the things was the safety and security, and gated community in 2009 was not as common as it is now. It was really a much more challenging space to come into, so it would have immediately significantly changed the risk factor. It still does, because the amount of crime and violence in gated communities across the country would be less than in spaces that are not secured or as secured. So it would have been that. But what I didn't really like was the lining up and the feeling, I'll say it, the feeling of begging somebody for a handout.
Because I know some people waiting 15, 20 years in the system trying for
I, based on my makeup, I struggle with that concept.
You mean? So you know exactly what you wanted?
Yeah. So I've never even applied. So I've never even applied to see what I feel.
That was.
I struggle with that concept.
That's very interesting.
In the private sector, how it works, it feels to me a lot more straightforward. If you have your deposit and you make your criteria, you can purchase your item. And you can pick which one you want, at which corner, on which street, which up. So that lined up better with who I am and how I wanted to model myself. So immediately from jump, I really looked at private enterprise and private housing.
All right. So moving along, I mean, that is some great tips: home ownership tips, guidelines, private. Motivational from the age standpoint. What an accomplishment. So congratulations again on that feat, and a gentle reminder that, and thanks for sharing it with our audience.
Right, no problem.
All right, I want to tap into there were so many awards along the way. The National Youth Council. It's too much for me to really, it's best you share that.
Right.
Give us some highlight in terms of the awards, that timeline.
Right, so doing business, doing church, or being involved in church, and having a philosophy of being the change that you seek and going after what you want. We had a number of young men who were very active in sports, and in that space, in that church space, we really wasn't seeing the leaders creating those avenues for us out of the straightforward church activity. Other social activities that doesn't have a direct religious connection, but still keeps you in line with spiritual values and goals, health-wise, and that kind of stuff. So while we were talking about it with a couple of different men from different areas, well, young boys at the time, we decided, you know what, let's be the change that we seek. You don't need to wait on somebody for a handout or wait on somebody to do a program. Let's do it ourselves. So I created something called the Haywood Cup. And in the first couple of years, we had young men from all over Trinidad and Tobago coming with teams to play in the tournament. And what resulted in that, when the tournament is in like August, you would have had teams training for months in their own communities, developing their own skills, and coming to the tournament to see who was the best. And in that, it branched off from just church teams to community-based teams. So now churches will then engage the best players in their community because it became so prestigious that it became more than just
a sweat.
A sweat or church boys thing. It really became the best in the communities also coming, and it was a space that was a total positive space. And coming out of that, the government would have seen that, and through recommendations would have gotten a National Youth Award for sports management, meaning events that are led by young people, managed by young people, for young people. And we'd have won that award, and that again doubled down, top tier, top of the country, world class. And then coming out of that, I'd have started a couple other businesses, and that would have formalized the Cillian brand, which is the NGO. And then I've started other businesses with like the car rental and then catering and stuff like that, and hired only young people, developed only young people, and that's when I got a second National Youth Award under different political administration for Entrepreneur of the Year, which changed everything at that point in time.
Okay. How would you describe that feeling when you got that award, and how did it catapult your professional and business life henceforth?
It blew my head up too much. So after that award, I said, forget that, I'm leaving my job. I'm a businessman. I can make money, and everybody knows it and sees it. So I left my job, and I went to do business full time. And terrible 3 years. Barely hanged on. But it's in those lessons you learn so much. It's in that space you learn so much about life. Because at that time, I was of the opinion I have brilliant ideas. And I know how to manifest them, and I know how to change those ideas into reality. But that was really in a limited context. It was in a limited cash flow context. It was in a limited cash value context. But when you go into business in full time, you need a lot more in terms of not just a great idea or a great business plan. You need fuel, and the investment. And I would have started to go into banks because now my head is telling me I'm number one. I have National Youth Awards. My mom telling me I'm number one. I'm sales stock champion of the country. I'm number one. So the bank has no other choice but to give me premium financing because I'm number one. And every bank I went into reminded me that I'm not number one in terms of premium financing. And that was a reality check. And that is where we encourage people to try things and to learn things. But the difference is the circle around you. And it is important to keep that circle around you because at that point in time, when I fell flat on my ground, I had friends who stood with me. My mom and dad stood with me. I had friends who paid my mortgage. Friends today who stayed in work and paid your mortgage. And I had friends who dropped food home by you. And that's the reality. But that
things
did not come.
That, challenging.
That tough. Definitely, that tough.
Because people see the line, they see the cars, they see the homes, and they just feel it's just hunky-dory, as they would say.
It had some risky. And that's why now we do so much of things towards youth development. Because my story or my current status and situation is only because of God's grace and others. Not because of decisions I made. So other persons who made the same decision like me, if they did not have a mom like mine, or a dad like mine, or a circle like mine, would have had a very different outcome. So looking at the different outcome doesn't mean coast
Yeah.
and it could stunt on them because it's easy to see that one different person in your life could transform your reality or your trajectory tremendously.
Yeah.
And that's why we do what we do now to try to help as much young people who do the same things like us, make the same errors like us, because we will do it. But who stands behind you to make sure that you don't fall flat on your face because of your youthful exuberance? And that's the critical part that we try to always be there now.
Excellent. So you add something very, interesting. Also personal. You mentioned circle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How would you describe that? I know you also got married at a young age.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How would you have described that process from success awards, investing in your home, growing up in the church, I guess marrying someone, that fell in love with.
Well, I don't know what you fell in love with, but
for want of a better word. so there's all a timeline.
Yeah.
So how would you describe that experience, that high, low, up, down? Tell our audience about that experience.
So the reality, going into some, the reality is, at times in life, we end up in certain spaces and certain constructs where the external system and pressure drives your behavior.
Right.
So what I mean is, when you operate in a certain space, the environment or the community expects you to do certain things at a certain period of time.
Okay.
And because of my heavy involvement in youth work, because of my heavy involvement in church work and church activity, not direct pressure, but systematic pressure would give you better you're married and burn kind of energy.
Okay.
And as a result of that, and this is in hindsight, right? As a result of that, I would have made decisions that were right and in keeping with the systems in which I operated at that point in time. And were ideal. Okay. And it's a very good example for the whole group and the whole congregation and for everybody else. But it was not really a decision that I made out of
100% totality.
Out of pure love and affection and swept off your feet. Or just totally my decision in a sense, organically. It was my decision through the brought-ups and the systems that we came up in. And that, while it's touchy to say, it's very important to say because it's a reality. And we have a number of young people doing things they don't want to do. But just because they were brought up to be obedient and to honor your mom and dad for your days to be long. And sometimes miss who you truly are and what you truly are. Because when things go array, especially in relationships or marriages, you can't run to your mom and dad for help. You can't run to the elders for help. You have to really deal with that in your home. And if you did not bring yourself up to address those things from before, mano, then you will struggle. And that's what happened with me. I would have struggled. I would not have been able to deal with it because things that I did not address or check for myself before, I would have ended up in that situation, and that would not have been successful. So that is something that I've learned now, and I'm very much more circumspect in how I make decisions and what is the reason for making whatever decisions. What is driving me? Is it external? Is it something I want to do? Is it societal? And so that has helped me a lot moving forward. So now when I make decisions, I am 100% comfortable in any sphere or with the decisions I make now.
Excellent. And I guess with the experience, that's a wealth of knowledge that you could share with the youth.
Well,
in terms of the NGO business, etc.
But it's critical to that, but it's tough because to have that that strength in self-awareness is not easy. When you say I am not doing that because I don't want to do it, comes with pressure. And you have to be certain that you can withstand that pressure. And it's unfortunate because it should not have that pressure. But trying to fix that may be impossible.
based on that challenge that you may have had in terms of the systems, what recommendations do you see the elders or certain organizations, whether social development, whether private organizations, religious groups, whatever, what guidelines you think they should share with young persons? Because relationships is serious. Courtship is serious. Marriage is serious. So it's not something you should rush into.
Correct.
Because that could change your life. Right. So what do you recommend, seeing that the systems, whatever they may be at your experience,
right?
What do you think they could do differently now for young people?
What I've learned is good intentions does not mean good activity.
Right.
And I am convinced that those in my space at that time and now had 100% good intentions. I don't think persons would have been encouraging me, or the system that have been encouraging me a particular way was built with bad intentions to see me fail or to see my marriage in that context not work out. I don't think it was built like that. I think it was built with good intentions. But in the midst of certain systems and structures for the mass public, everyone is still an individual. So what I would say is we need to remember our individuality in this space when we're dealing with younger people. Because even when we talk about the heads or the older persons, they were young as well. They are very clear what they would have done,
and they would
have
social media, so
but they know. They know what they felt.
They
know what it was like growing up with their parents as well, or their grandparents. They know. And what we have to be mindful of is, even if we are in a space of higher learning compared to where we were, we have to be able to take into consideration that we were at that space at some point in time and have some compassion in our judgments and instructions. So that's what I would. So I think it's more an idea of coaching the mentors than the young people, because young people will always be young people. Is the right people who understand how to manage young people are the ones who get the best results and the best young people around them.
Excellent. This is a great testimony. Personal youth development, different initiatives, right? In the interest of time, there are two things I would like to touch on. Well, just about three more. Right. Firstly, I would like to talk on that bridging from entrepreneurship, going back into the corporate world. And also the whole getting back into business after corporate. So tell us about that corporate experience, getting back into that world.
So when I went into business full time, you also learn on the job. Because in the classroom, it teaches you the principles of business, principles of accounts. That's actually the name of the subject. Right? But it does not teach you entrepreneurship. It teaches you the principles by which you can operate. And in the reality, at that point in time, I realized the importance of cash flow, the importance of relationships, the importance of connections and networking. Because besides having the deposit or a cash deposit, what also happens is reputation and integrity. And if you are recommended highly or you come with certain experiences, you will be able to grow faster. So I would have gone back into the world of work to reset myself, to recalibrate myself, because the life I was living was not sustainable. And while I had friends who held me up in critical times, that is not their responsibility to take care of me. So I've gone back in the world of work with a different mindset now. With a mindset of how do I get enough learnings and training and development and also savings to be able to achieve my heart's desire. Because it's not for everybody. Being a businessman is not for everybody. You get paid last, you eat last, and you have to make sure everybody else is legally comfortable. So I started back in that. I did sales supervising in one company that I went across to answer my call for 7 years. And as there, my business acumen is something that they called entrepreneurship. All right, which is internal entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is having the mindset to go and do big things, to dream big, to think out of the box. But entrepreneurship is doing that within a system, a system of structure, a system of policy, a system of rules and regulations and best practices. And coming out of that experience and that knowledge and being able to put savings as well and develop relationships, then I was able to make the transition back. And I ended there last year, December. Then I was able to make the transition back. Although I had things running and developing at the side, then I was able to make the proper transition. And now when we engage the bank, we speak the correct language, we provide the correct documents, we understand what they are looking for, not what we are looking for. So those are some of the critical learnings. And those are things that we can develop. I know you all do a lot of training and seminars, and that's what this is for. So people can look at it and then don't have to experience doing business full-time and learning those lessons. They can follow this seminar, they can follow this conference and learn through our experiences so that they won't have to necessarily go through that and be more prepared.
Well, Mr. Haywood, I know we could carry on this conversation from now till next year in terms of the experience, but I want to thank you for coming out, visiting our studios and
beautiful
sharing.
Studio, to be honest.
Thank you. By God's grace.
Yeah, man.
All right. I want to thank you for making time to meet with us and sharing your knowledge with our members and our attendants. Thanks, Mr. Haywood.
No problem at all.
Take care.